Hi, everyone. Hi, welcome to another of the In Conversation series. This time it feels like it's a little bit special because we're talking with someone who has a partner with dissociative identity disorder or DID. So that's the person you're going to see on the screen now, which is Lauren. So, hi, Lauren. Thank you very much for being here. So, we're going to have a talk just what it's like to be in that sort of relationship with someone with DID and hopefully that will give people some reassurance or some pointers or some understanding about what that is all like. So let's get started. So hi Lauren. Hi, thank you so
Hi.
much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Now you're in the States, so this is kind of nice. We have different time zones and we have all that kind of fun. Um,
Yes.
so it's really nice being able to talk to you today and get a sense of what it is that you're going through. I do think lots and lots of people are going to be interested in this video. It feels like a really important one. So, to get started, how about you give us all a little bit of a sense about yourself, like what sort of situation you're in and why doing this is so important to you.
Yeah, so my name is Lauren. I am 35 years old. I am from the States, Maryland specifically, and I have been a partner of someone with DID for about 15 years.
Wow.
I currently work in mental health. I work at a residential treatment center for mental health, and I'm currently going to school to be a therapist, hopefully with a special specialty in DID. So that is kind of the goal.
Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So
And
um,
do you think have you been sort of inspired towards that because of the stuff we're going to be talking about today?
oh, 100%, 100%. So, and we'll get into it, but definitely, I think kind of this life path opened up because of my unique situation and everything, that comes along with it. So,
Gosh. Yeah. So who's the person that you're in the relationship with? Who's your partner? Are we okay
his,
with their first name? Is that okay?
yeah, that is perfectly fine by me. So his name is Mike.
That's easy to remember.
Yes, yes. I just realized that connection. Yes. So his name is Mike.
Cool.
And he currently has 9 alters. So, I'm in a relationship with one, but, also in a relationship with 9 others. So,
Awesome. Yeah. And so has Mike been diagnosed like for a while? And you guys have been together for a while, I guess,
yeah.
quite a few years. How
Yeah.
long has he been diagnosed, or how long has he known, and how long have you known for?
Yeah. So we've been together 16 years. Like I had said earlier, in terms of diagnosis, we found out about 4 years ago. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we've been in a relationship already for 12 years, and I think there were little signs here and there that something was different, something was, off,
Yeah.
but didn't realize it was till this capacity until he did receive the diagnosis. And I actually was the one, I did a lot of research trying to figure out what
Yeah.
was going on with my husband, like what was happening. Like, he was blacking out, like there was things going on, and it's like, this has to be something. So I did all of this research and then got a hold of a psychologist and just asked my husband to go in for a diagnosis. And he went in and kind of didn't want to say anything. He knew what I thought it was, but didn't want to say anything. And like during the interview, he's telling his story and telling, his background information. And the guy just dropped his pen at one point, and he was
Uh-huh.
wow, this is a lot. And he's like, I think I know what this is, but I need to kind of consult with my higher up. And my husband's like, what? You think it's DID? The guy's like, wait, it? He's like, yeah, my wife thinks it is too. So, about 4 years.
I think that's a really nice approach, Lauren, that you didn't sort of go in there with all the evidence to say, here's what it is, confirm it. You let that psychologist make their own mind up. And
Yes.
clearly, obviously I know that diagnostic process and they clearly went through everything you were saying, and that was the logical conclusion.
Yes.
Was it a relief or was it scary that it got confirmed as being diagnosed as DID?
It's kind of both, you
Okay.
know. um, figuring out it's like, okay, I feel like we finally have this puzzle. We have some missing pieces, like things are making sense. I wasn't, I wasn't imagining this, or, in this situation, it definitely could have been a different part of him. So things in that sense felt good knowing. But
Right.
then the other sense was that unknown, the fear of the unknown. And then, being a partner to someone who just received this diagnosis and trying to figure out how to support him during this time as well was also, more of a fear factor.
Okay. And you said that you'd seen signs. So you've obviously been with Mike for about 12 years or so prior to this diagnosis. So did the diagnosis allow you to look back and think you must have been right, that you knew that all of those little things that you saw, did you get some reassurance for knowing that something was up and then you found it was?
Yeah, yeah, I did because, there would be points in time where, you know, there there'd be an occurrence or an event that happened, and my husband would tell me, he's like, that didn't happen, like you're lying,
Mm.
like that wasn't a thing. And in my mind I'm like, okay, maybe I saw something wrong, maybe I didn't see it this way. And
Yeah.
then understanding that it was DID and that it might have been a different alter, it was like, okay, so my memories are valid, like things that I thought happened are true. You know it My husband, one thing that really kind of made me, I don't know, when you ask like what are the first signs, what are some things that you may have noticed,
Yeah.
my husband kind of had two sides, one in which was very affectionate, very loving, very caring, very, who I defined Mike, the host, to be. And then there was another part that was distant and really didn't want anything to do with me. And
Okay.
it was hard realizing, at that time that in my mind, what is going on? Like, how can you
Yeah,
be
of
this way
course.
one way and this way another way? Like, doesn't make sense. Yeah, so there was the two different sides. And, after getting that diagnosis, it, it was just kind of clear to see that there was more of a complexity to it, like
Yeah.
that, again, that there might it wasn't purposeful, that I think that was
Mm.
kind of a big thing for me, that it wasn't purposeful, like that it wasn't malicious intent or anything like that, that
Yeah.
it was just a different part of him.
Absolutely. That sounds really key. So, uh, could that allow you to sort of see Mike as a different person realistically, that he's not this, bit, sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. Did you
Yeah,
see Mike differently as a result of the diagnosis?
I did. More so in the sense that, to me, I kind of use the analogy of like a pie. There's a pie there, and I now consider my husband like a slice of that pie. There were other different pieces and other different aspects of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew that there were different parts of him, that it wasn't just him. And, at the time of the diagnosis, really only knew that there was two parts. And then, as time progressed and, he had some just thoughts with himself and dreams and things like that come about, we started learning the names of other alters. And as time came, some others emerged. So, kind of got more answers and more puzzle pieces there to kind of
Absolutely.
figure out. Yeah.
So yeah, one door opens and closes, and a whole load of new ones open up. Can
Yes.
I ask a bit of a blunt question, realistically? Like, if it wasn't for you, Lauren, would this assessment, with this diagnosis, would Mike ever have found out? Would he have done this on his own?
No, no. I
No.
had to call and I had to say, like, hey, my husband needs this evaluation. I know that I cannot legally book this appointment. However, if you call him right now and say, hey, would you like this appointment booked? He's more likely to say yes. Like, can
Wow.
you
Yeah, yeah,
please, you
yeah,
know, because especially for him, he is a person of color,
yeah,
and, mental health is not necessarily talked about with that. Going to a doctor, going to a psychiatrist, and I know his in his mind, that isn't for people of color, it's for people of, you know,
Yeah.
who have money and things like that. So he didn't, at that time, he didn't really understand what the benefits of that were.
Yeah. So you really had to lead and what was it an easy task to convince him? I mean, given all of that stuff and some of the stigma and the difficulties about walking through the door and just accepting, and I don't know, was the psychologist that you sat with, were they a person of color or were they white?
They were, I believe they were of Asian descent. So
Asian
yeah,
descent. Okay.
essentially
Okay.
person of color. Um,
So was the process okay for you? Did you get through it okay? You're having to lead Mike, you're having to set this appointment up, you're having to kind of go through all of this. And you were there in the room as well. Like, what was your experience of it?
I mean, it was kind of just mind blowing because, he's sitting there and he's sharing everything of his past. They're asking about, like, have you had any traumas? Have you had any, like, experiences with this and that? And he's telling stories that I've never heard of before.
Wow.
And it's just, at one point in the time, like, the guy had to put his pencil down, because it was just kind of in awe. Like, oh my goodness, like, do you realize everything that you're telling me is PTSD? Like every single thing. And,
Yeah.
my husband had said in the moment, this is just the life of a Black male. Like, this is just how I grew up. Like, I didn't think anything of it, like any different, that it was PTSD. And, you do have compassion in that moment. And, brings a lot of strong emotions that you just kind of want to go over and just hug him and,
Yeah.
just cry in that moment with him. But,
And
yeah,
it's so difficult because we're obviously not black, are we? So we don't have that experience of the world, the growing up, the being born into something and taking every step. As
right,
that person, like no matter what we try and do, we can't ever really know that because it's not our lived experience. It's not the design for us. The world is more catered for us
right,
all the time. So hearing that experience, yeah, that must have been really something just to get that insight into what it was like for him just to walk through the world as him. It
right,
shouldn't be any different, but it is, sadly.
mhm,
So you had to hold all of that and see that, take that experience into yourself.
right. Yeah.
Not easy.
No, not easy. And, afterwards, you're kind of sitting there and you're getting all this information and it's it's such a shock factor. And then you kind of think about it. It's like, hold on, this isn't really not dismissing my feelings in any way, but it's like I need to be here for him right now because I'm sure getting a diagnosis is a lot more scarier than hearing kind of what I'm going through right now. So having to step into that role and kind of leave those feelings unprocessed for a bit was challenging.
It is going to be, you're right. I mean, but you have to be that support in that moment. If you crumbled, the whole thing could fall apart. So you
Right,
had to be really strong and tough and do that role. But then what happens to yours? What happens to your feelings, your take on it? Because that's none of what you're describing is straightforward or easy. You probably
right.
weren't geared up for it. And I know obviously you're looking into sort of mental health work now, but maybe you weren't at the time. And what happened, who looked after you, I suppose?
Yeah. For a while, I think I just, again, kind of ignored my feelings and kind of sprang into action of like, okay, we have this diagnosis, let's kind of figure out what's going on. Like the first stage for him was acceptance. For a while, he didn't want to accept the fact that this was happening. He didn't want to accept the fact that, that he had this. It's a big thing to do. So for a while, there was support there, support with that.
Yeah.
But I was lost. There was not any information out there for what I was going through. You can't you can't go to a bookstore and find a book on this type of stuff. It just doesn't
No,
exist. It
no.
doesn't. And, I just tried to at the time, I was just trying to be the support for him, and I was kind of neglecting myself in that way.
I wonder if that's a very common experience for people in your position that everything that you might need is sidelined. Not, in any selfish way or anything like that. It's just that you've got to be there for him and hope maybe that there's something for you down the line. Whether there is or not is up for grabs, and maybe we can talk about that in a little bit more. But I'm just wondering whether within you obviously talk about Mike and you're obviously married with each other. Is there anyone else around you in terms of your family? Do you have kids? Do you have sort of extended family around?
I do. So I have two children. At the time, well, currently they are 15 and 13. So I have two children. Um,
Right. So they were that, and we're thinking 4 years ago, so it was like 11 and 9.
mhm.
So okay, so what happened with them? How did this go in terms of speaking to them about it? What was the deal?
That was a hard one. So it's
Right.
how do you how do you kind of tell your children this? And well, you're still processing it all too. Like how do you, because of course you don't want to tell your children, the aspects of like your father has endured all this trauma. Like you don't want to get into that. In my eyes, I feel like they're not old enough to kind of be given that
I agree.
information.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
So, for me, and it was, I believe like some of your videos really had kind of helped with a lot of things and understanding, but I used the movie Inside Out was one of the things I
Good
used.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, and just explain that, we all have different parts to us. We have a part that's happy, a part that's sad, a part that, maybe this way or that way sometimes, but your dads are just a little bit different than ours. They're more pronounced. They're just, you know,
Okay.
yeah, pretty much that.
Yeah. And that was a pressure or a responsibility that you took on, or did you discuss with Mike who was going to speak to the kids about this?
I kind of took it on myself, because they are noticing that things are happening. They are noticing that, you know, dad is now in a childlike mode.
Yeah.
His kid alter has fronted. Like, he's, nah, I don't know. One of Mike's alters, like, it's a kid and he's hiding Cheetos under his shirt and, singing back to the couch with the Cheetos under his shirt. Understanding to the children, like, this is just a different part of him.
Yeah. And
So,
do they come to you with questions? So are they do they watch? Are they curious about this? How have they responded and how have you managed with that?
a little bit. I think they've just kind of accepted that,
Hmm.
that he's not just dad, that he is these other parts. And my husband, not all of his parts come out, like with any system, some are, and also with any system, their goal is to kind of hide and not let you know they're there.
Yep.
Um, but I think they've kind of just accepted, knowing that they're there. And, I know at one point in time when Moon Knight came out,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
my
Marvel
my
show.
son had, yeah, my son had watched it and he's like, is this what dad has? And it's like, yeah, it's very similar to what dad has. And, having a conversation about that. You also asked about other family, like, my family lives close. So my mom and my dad,
Right.
they're right down the corner. His mom, his dad, right down the corner. So there was also conversations with that as well.
So you've shared the diagnosis with your parents and with Mike's parents.
Yes, I kind of let him more take control with his parents.
Okay.
I thought that that was more appropriate there because it's kind of a lot of trauma stems from that area. But I had to have the conversation with my parents.
And did that go well? Or
Not,
okay.
not at first,
And breathe. Yeah.
because as you know, the media stigmatizes everything so much, so much. So, when you're sitting there telling your parents, what is going on, what is happening,
Yeah.
they keep on throwing in, are you safe? is he going to hurt you? Like,
Wow.
those type of accusations. And no, I have. Yeah, I've been with him for 12 years. So it's like you know this man. Like
Yeah.
you know everything. And so and then a lot of it is, well, I haven't seen any of this. I've never seen this or that, or all you're talking about, they don't have necessarily the language developed either, so when you're talking about fronting, when you're talking about this, like they didn't really understand. And to this day, I think that they still don't quite understand everything, but
Yeah.
they were open-minded as to allowing me to kind of just inform them.
Okay. Yeah. And are they supportive of you now? So if you get stressed, if you get tired, are they people who can get it? Do they know
A little bit,
a little
you
bit?
know, a little bit. Not as much as I would like for them to be, but if I did need to talk to them, they might not fully understand the conversation, of what I'm saying, but they are able to, get the best advice they can.
Okay. I think you've done outstanding with that because again, we're looking at this as sort of almost like a series of hurdles to get over on on a race to get to the finish line, which is everything's going to work out fine. All of these things that you've gone through. Are you tired from this? Has this been what kind of journey has this been for you in terms of your stress levels, your health, your energy, any of that?
Yeah, it's definitely added a lot to my plate. I will say that. Um, and I think it just comes back down to that support factor, thinking that not knowing what to do, like in terms of like this is happening right now, and who do I talk to about this? Where can I get information about this? Who can say that they have experienced something like this? Like, I think one of the biggest things for me, and that was kind of like my I can't do this anymore, was when my husband was coming to me and he was having self-harm like scars and
Oh,
not knowing how they got there.
yeah.
And it's like, what do I do right now?
Mm,
Like, working in mental health, you work with patients who do have self-harm tendencies and things like that. And I
yeah.
kind of had the information and knowledge from that, but it's like for someone not to remember what they're doing. And
Mm,
it's, you think you know all the alters, you think you know all the parts. But it's like, what is this right
yeah.
now? And
And
then
you're just holding it. It's been presented to you and you have to sit with it.
right, right.
So where
And
where have you got your help from, Lauren? I mean, where has your support emerged from?
think one thing I will say, I'm no longer a part of it. I wish I was. But there was a woman online. Her name is Ethel, and she is a woman from Canada. And just from the kindness of her heart, I believe her daughter has DID. She was in a very similar situation in which she just felt like she needed somebody who understood. She needed a community. So she started, this group and met online on Zoom. And they had a group for
Oh,
partners of DID.
okay, great.
There was about seven of us, it was a small community, but we were from all over the world,
Yeah.
and coming in there and, just sharing everything and hearing like, oh no, like my partner's system does that too. It just brought so much relief and just made me feel like I was not alone. And that was such a huge thing for me, that really, really helped me um, just process and deal with all of it.
And it's really interesting what you said there. It helps me realize I'm not on my own, I'm not alone, because that's what a lot of people that are diagnosed with DID feel, that they're
Yes.
alone in it. So the enormity of what they're carrying is being mirrored with what you're carrying. So your experience of having a partner, having a husband, Mike, with
Yeah.
DID, you're experiencing very similar things. Is it just me? Am I the only one going through this?
hmm Where is the information I can turn to? Like,
Yep.
oh, just again, that validation of is this really happening right now? Like, and again, the factor of I need to support myself, but I also need to support him. Like, how can I juggle both roles?
Yeah. And that's what you've got to do, isn't it? Because you obviously haven't walked away. You can't just leave this and hope it's going to be okay. You've taken a leading role in this. So reaching out, finding some support, finding a group and having that validation for yourself that what you're going through is similar to other people.
Yeah.
Has Have you had to go through sort of experiences like maybe regretting that you've ever gone through that process, maybe regretting the marriage that this is where you've ended up, or maybe resenting something, or have you had to go through some really tough personal emotions on this journey?
I have. Because I think one of the biggest ones for me was that I have the way my husband's system is set up, he considers himself the host and, that there
Yeah.
is the body and, different parts occupy it at times, but he is the host. And I consider myself married to the host.
Yes.
And one of the biggest struggles is he's not always present. He's not always there.
Yeah.
So, when do I get to spend time with the person that I married? There's some alters that don't like me, you
Really?
know. Yes.
And they have they made that clear? Have they like,
Yes.
oh, so you've got to kind of see your husband saying to you, "I don't like you, I don't want you," through
Yeah.
those altars.
Yes. That clear, distant, just like I said, that kind of coldness there
Yeah.
and trying to separate that kind of not to take it personal or in the moment to kind of just walk away from that and knowing that your husband will come back at some point or but it's just sometimes I do wish for that normalcy, just
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have that. And
Yeah.
I've kind of accepted that my relationship is like no other and it's crazy and
Yeah.
but it's my relationship and I've come to there are some parts that do like me, so I've come to
That's
kind of appreciate those relationships and grow with those relationships as well.
and you've had to form those relationships from scratch. So this is in the last 4 years or so, this is entirely new territory. So
Yes.
there are some that like you and accept you, and there are some that don't. And then in
Hmm.
between that, you've still got to find time for marriage and have fun. And how
Yeah.
on earth do you juggle this, Lauren?
I don't know. I kind of just keep going. A lot of it comes down to self-care. A lot of it comes to, having therapy yourself, having that aspect.
And you've done that, so you've got someone like a professional who is going through this and helping you. You've got
Yeah,
that person.
I did. For a long time, I was working with someone, and his daughter had DID, so he was able to understand what I was talking about, and also give me a perspective of like, well, this alter right now may be feeling this or that, like giving me really good advice
Yeah.
that was appropriate to the situation. Um, as of now, no, my insurance, I live in America, insurance and all that healthcare. My
Yeah.
insurance changed. So, the person that I was seeing for so long, he does not take my insurance anymore.
Oh.
Now I'm in the journey of trying to find someone else, and not only for myself, I'm trying to find a therapist for my husband.
So the person you were seeing is different from that person wasn't also seeing your husband. So and
No,
has your husband had therapy or is in therapy? What's going on with that?
he had therapy. He tried a couple therapists. And currently he is not in therapy.
So neither of you are at the moment then.
No, no. I am utilizing, like I said, I'm going to college right now, so I am utilizing one of the counselors on campus. So I've been doing that, for a couple months, kind of in between. this time of looking for another therapist. But in terms of him, no. He had some therapist, and one of his parts, her name is Bean, Bean,
Yeah.
and it Bean is another word for brain, and she
Ah,
is so intelligent,
yeah.
so book smart. So so when she was meeting with these psychiatrists, she just felt as if they weren't qualified. They didn't know what they were talking about, that they just they just didn't have the information, that they didn't know what they were saying. So a lot of times she would just end the call, just
As
hit
in
the
just
end.
close it down. So that like in so Bean was kind of watching all of this taking place through Mike's eyes,
Yes.
not liking it, and said, "No, no, this is over. We're done.
Yep. Yep.
They're not
I'm
good
done.
enough. This is rubbish." Whatever she was thinking.
Yep. Yep. And just turn it off. And then it kind of also, the rest of the system, they're like, okay, like we don't want to do this either. So, when my husband would set up an alarm for a time for therapy, and they would go and they would turn the alarm off.
Yeah.
Or, and therapy, it is a business. It comes down to that. And, when you miss a certain amount on appointments, unfortunately, a lot of times services have to be terminated.
Yeah. They just.
So, right. So when they're sitting here ending calls and doing this, like, and I feel as if
Mm,
there are a lot of therapists that mark we use Psychology Today. That I don't know if that's a website that you guys have over there, but we use Psychology Today to find therapists, and you can kind of list like your qualifications and kind of what you specialize in and things like that. And a lot of people put on their profiles that they specialize in dissociation and dissociative disorders. And there I've seen a couple that have DID, but then when you get into an interview with them and you're talking,
they
they
don't
may have
know.
had one client who had it, or they don't really have that knowledge and
Yeah.
just that expertise, which is extremely, extremely frustrating.
Yeah. And again, was this one of the things that you took the lead on, searching people, finding the right person? So, and if you
Mhm.
hadn't have tried this, this wouldn't have, you wouldn't have got anywhere.
I
So,
wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
yeah.
No.
So you're having to find people, validate whether they know what you're doing. And I know exactly what you're talking about. There's lots of people that have that, oh yeah, I'm really good at dissociation. I'm
Mhm.
great and I do this and I'm, and yeah, they've seen one person and they saw them for like 3 months and they read about
Yes.
it. And it's, yeah, we understand exactly where you're coming from, but you've got that pressure. You've got to work out who is going to be suitable for me and who is going to be suitable for my husband.
Yes.
And
And
if
I
something goes wrong, have you ever been blamed? Has there ever been a pushback on you from within the system somewhere that you made the wrong choice? And why, like Bean, did she ever come at you and say, why did you choose that guy? They were rubbish or anything like that?
oh no, thankfully I don't have any of that aspect.
Okay, that's cool.
I will say that I didn't add like that. There had also come a point where they had kind of felt like, especially with the one therapist, like kind of like given up on, like, that here I am with this disorder. Someone should understand that, how DID works, and that someone may hang up the call, that they should understand things like that. And it came to the mindset of that I have everything within me. I have all these parts that run as a system. Why do I need any other outside help telling me how to do this if I already have all the parts here that, can manage my life?
Yeah.
So, that was the biggest thing. And then, recently he has admitted that he does want to see another therapist, but he wants somebody that understands, again, someone of color who understands, the struggles that might be associated, with living in like a lower income family, or, associated with living a different lifestyle than,
Yes.
um, so that's been the struggle now, trying to find that.
Yeah, I think hard enough to find someone who is genuinely good and the
Yes.
right person, and then you have to kind of add all those extra things in to say, yeah, but it's got to also be like this and also be like this. But that's what it sounds like is needed
Yes.
realistically.
Yeah.
I'm interested in if you look back, Lauren, on everything that you've done, because you've really gone at this in the last 4 years. You're still married, so brilliant, right? Well done. I mean, first and foremost, the marriage has survived all of these processes, so the relationship between you and Mike must be very, very strong and a good bond, and
Mhm.
that hugely makes a difference. When you reflect back on everything that you've done, is there anything that you'd wished you'd done differently?
Mhm. Um, I think as you know, with marriages, there are ups and downs, and there are hardships within a marriage. And there was at one point in time that I hurt the system.
Okay,
And, from that, there has been some fractures and things of that nature. And I wish that that was different, you
sure.
know.
Okay,
Um, that is definitely something that I wish were to be different.
okay. But then
Yeah,
you're not perfect, right? So whatever the context of that was, whether it
right,
was a genuine mistake or whether it was something said in anger or whatever it might be, you're entitled to that. You should be allowed to have those things happen.
right,
There's no way you could do everything perfectly. I don't do anything perfectly, so why would you, right? We're not designed to be perfect.
right.
Are you forgiving of yourself for things? So yeah, you might wish, yeah, I wish I'd gone back and done that differently, but are you kind of being kind to yourself by saying, well, that happened and I got to try and figure it out, but
Mhm. Yeah,
I,
I am. A lot of therapy went into it, but I have forgiven myself, and I know what mistakes I've made and plan to not put myself in that situation again where, things may happen. But I think the hardest challenge is, how the alters have processed it.
yep,
You know, some of them, my husband has forgiven me, and he's moved past it in a sense, but there's some others who have this on a constant loop. If anything occurs, anything that's triggering, it's to them, they feel like it's happening right now.
yeah,
And it's hard because you're forgiven by some, but others you're not, and others they hold that against you.
yeah. And that's
So
that's really what makes this such a difficult thing for a partner, for a wife to be able to sort of carry, because it's not like, say, diabetes where you just forgot to do X, Y, and Z. And you
right.
like, you know what, I screwed up. And they're like, don't worry about it. We all screw up. And then it's sort of done because the forgiveness comes from the source. Like Mike would say, it's not your problem. It's not your fault. We both forgot to do this thing.
Right.
Got like a whole system there that is jumbled and thinking about you in different ways. And maybe some of them are looking for a mistake so that they can go,
Mhm.
see, I told
Exactly.
you she was no good. I told you you can't trust
Yep.
it. And how, you can't be Mike's therapist, but at the same time, you can't not be therapeutic
Hmm.
in what you're doing. So you've got to look after yourself and you've got to make space and time to look after Mike and you've got to look after the system.
Yes.
And you're doing that currently without any support or help on a professional level, other than what you can grab and what you can make available to yourself. I mean,
Right.
my goodness, Lauren, my heart goes out to you. It really does. I think you're giving us a really positive view as well as being really honest with how tough this is because this everything you've done has clearly worked, right? Without you wouldn't be in this position and things might have just spiraled and got out of control in a different direction. So you've held things together at great cost to yourself. And there's going to be a lot of people watching this video, I know, who are going to be empathizing with you and going, I have been there, I have done that, and I'm still doing that. Or maybe I'm going to have to do that because maybe some people watching this have a partner who they suspect might have a condition like DID and are watching this going, can I do what she did? Do I have, what advice might you give people on everything that you've learned along the way? How might you advise people watching this in what they might be going through as a partner?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is to know that every system is different. So how my husband presents may be different than how your partner's system presents. So you may have some of the same challenges and you may not. Um, I know for me the biggest thing was kind of just to keep learning, to keep, you know, digging for answers. Watching your videos have been so helpful with everything. So helpful. And hearing other stories have been so helpful. I know one of the biggest things that I did in the beginning that really helped me was kind of have a notebook and write down, some patterns that I was observing and just what alter may have been present and what are some things that I can do to help cope with,
Yes.
the alter. And that has been phenomenal. Just knowing like, okay, this one is in this state. What are some things we can try to help ground and bring down? Or, you know, um,
Yeah.
just realizing too, I think boundaries are important as well. Establishing boundaries with your partner and
Mhm.
enforcing boundaries because you do need to care for yourself. And I will preach and preach and preach self-care, self-care, self-care.
Yeah.
That is so important, so important.
And what's yours then, Lauren? What's your absolute go-to self-care? What do you find solace in?
I like like taking bubble baths, kind of pampering myself with that. That this has been one of
Nice.
my favorites. And then for me, I enjoy video games. I'm a video gamer.
Are you?
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So just kind of having that escape too. Of just kind of living in a different, reality for a little bit and, playing with characters and just doing something that I love, and for everyone else, they all have you do what you love. It might be different than what I do, but you still need to make time for yourself at the end of the day because you only have so much to give. You got to make sure that you have your pitcher full with some water for yourself. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're a gamer. When I seriously hurt my back quite a few years ago, over 10 years ago, and I was in a lot of pain and I was off work and I got into World of Warcraft and I
Hmm.
found I had to play it lying on the ground with a laptop. I couldn't sit properly because of the back pain. But honestly, it felt like I just went into a little funny zone and my pain went and my discomfort went. When I stopped playing after about 3 hour session or something, then I had a lot of pain. But
Right.
it was lovely to just immerse in another reality and
Hmm.
just play some of the day away. And I think it's great if you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find some space for yourself. Well,
Yeah.
Lauren, I think is there any, well, before we stop, is there anything else that you would like to add? We've talked about all sorts of different things. We've learned an awful lot about yourself and about Mike. And I know Mike is happy for you to have, have this interview and to talk about this stuff. Is there anything else that maybe we haven't touched on that you think would be important?
Give me a second to think about this one. Hmm, okay. I think something that would be important or, is the advocacy aspect of it. I think we need to continue having conversations like this. I think we need to continue, sharing our stories, sharing our voices, sharing, you know, just our journeys with others. To make these resources available, to make others feel as if they're not alone, to just spread, positive information, amongst all this stigma. And, I think that's so important, like the advocacy aspect and, you know, just having that material available for people who might be in a similar situation. I think that's,
I agree. Yeah.
you know,
And I think, I certainly hope we stay in touch after this video. And I'm really glad that you're going in, you're in the mental health kind of profession and you are absolutely, I can tell, going to be flying the flag for a positive approach to this and not seeing it as being the movie type disorder, that there's a reality, there's a pain to this, but there's also an elegance and there's recovery within this field. And I know that you're going to be out there telling people this and encouraging people to learn. And I suspect you'll probably get into training as well later on
Yes.
down the line. You're very, very good at just being able to share an experience, and you'll come at this from with all of that. You'll have the professional knowledge and you'll have your personal experience, and that's why I think this video is so important, and I hope lots of people watch it. I hope lots of people share it, because yeah, we do need to get those barriers down, don't we? Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren, and I speak for all of us watching this to just, I think we're overwhelmed with admiration for your honesty and your guts and your willingness to share this deeply personal story, and to Mike as well for being okay, for having some of his story reflected on in this video. It's so, yeah, it's so powerful, and I'm yeah, it's very, very appreciative of your time to do this. So thank you very
Mhm.
much, Lauren.
Of course, I appreciate you having me as well.
It's been a great pleasure and an honor. Okay, everyone. So, as always, please do leave some comments, and about what you think in this about the conversation we've had today. And it's because we have to share these things, and we have to have this sort of like the shared wisdom and the shared experience between us all. So please do all the usual stuff. If watching this video has kind of triggered or made people feel upset, take Lauren's advice, go do some self-care, do some looking after yourself, and know that Lauren is going to be okay and is going to be in good hands and is doing really well given all the struggles. If she wasn't, she wouldn't have been here talking to us today. So thanks ever so much for watching. Please do like, subscribe, do all the usual stuff. Share the video as widely as you can. We want this to be seen by as many people so that they can be supported and feel validated in the way that Lauren has been. And then between now and the next video, as always, please do take great care.